Hi, everyone. It's Amaka.
And Camellia,
And this is Let's Talk with Amaka and Camellia.
in case you didn't get it the first time.
Yes, just in case you didn't get it the first time. I know, right? Who is who? Which is so today we have a great guest. I'm actually excited because she's actually a professor. And her name is Perrine DeShield-Jenkins, also known as Professor P. And
That's a cool name.
That's a real cool name, Professor P. And I'm excited because she is on her. I went on her Instagram page to check her out, and she's spewing a lot of fashion knowledge.
Oh, her shorts are they're so interesting.
Yeah,
it makes you go like,
Didn't think about that.
Yeah.
You know, it is really cool, and she just. From what I see so far, it just seems like she kind of gives it to you and explains it in the most eloquent but simple way for you to understand. And you're going, aha, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
So she is also the founder of Mint to Be, the gala, an exhibition inspired by the Met Gala that happens every year. So that I definitely want to know, because I know it's definitely not easy putting that together.
Well, shoot. She got a lot to break down today.
Exactly.
We're going to put this professor to the test.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's definitely going to be fun. So it's going to be teacher, teach me. You know, I love fashion, but she is the professor.
Yeah.
I had to like really pick her brain and like get to know her course, how she got into it, and basically get her thoughts on the industry today and let us know what she thinks. So be sure to join us when we are done to get our final thoughts. You definitely don't want to miss it. Talk to you soon.
On this episode of the AfroStyle Podcast, we're joined by Professor Perrine DeShield-Jenkins, also known as Professor P, a fashion professor at the Savannah College of Art and Design and the creator of Mint to Be. In this conversation, we explore fashion beyond aesthetics, as identity, performance, and cultural expression. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Class is in session. Enjoy the show.
You're in Atlanta now, right? Just to make sure.
Well, right now I'm actually in Savannah, technically. So yeah, so SCAD, we have a few different locations, campuses. So we have one in Atlanta. Our primary original campus is in Savannah, Georgia, and then we also have one in Lacoste, France. So I get to teach there in the fall. I have for the past few years, so that's cool. But yeah, we have 3 campuses.
How long have you been a professor there? And how long has that your profession as a professor been?
So I started with SCAD at the end of 2022. So my first quarter was at the top, like January 2023, but all of just like the training and onboarding and whatnot was 2022. So I mean, I would say I really have been teaching for 4 years because the lesson planning, the kind of building curriculums, all of that started, before my first class. So yeah, for 4 years now.
Wow.
So, what does your curriculum look like? Because from it's not about hard construction of design, is it? Or is it more about the styling and conceptualization of design?
So do you mean like what kind of classes I teach, or how do I construct my curriculum?
I guess what kind of classes do you teach, or what, what exactly? Because I'm still kind of so curious about what the content is.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So I teach fashion marketing and management. So that is our department at SCAD. And so I mean, I've been working in the fashion industry for, more than half my life at this point. So for a few decades. And so with fashion marketing, we expand upon a few different aspects, everything from social media, experiential events, merchandising, planning, buying, sourcing. We kind of like break down all of the different aspects, that really make the fashion industry move in order for designers to make money and profit. So we do everything but sew. That's kind of our joke in our department. But our students also know how to sew, and I know how to sew. So it's like, yeah. So that's kind of like the combination of it all. But I specifically get to lean into my journalism just background with a trend forecasting class that I teach in Lacoste, where we actually have students make their own magazine built on a very niche aspect of just trends. And so that's really fun because I get to kind of like share the art of storytelling and beyond. We have a fashion journalism minor at SCAD. And so I have several students that our fashion journalism minor. So it's really cool to see those come together. I teach an aesthetics and style class, and that's like a 200 level. It's really the introduction to the department where they get to learn about just branding, like just 101. Their first project is called Your Style, Your Way, where we really introduce them as a brand and they have to understand who they
Whoa.
are and their inspirations. And then as the quarter builds, we talk about legendary fashion designers. We talk about the 5 Ps of branding, the golden circle. We talk about all of these different, theories and concepts to apply to branding so that by the end they feel confident.
Man,
And
a lot
so
of layers. There's a lot of It's just
lots
interesting
of
because when
layers.
people are looking from the outside in, people who are not in the
Hmm.
fashion industry, I'm not going to generalize. I always say that so people don't think,
Yeah.
oh, you're generalizing. But I think a lot of people just think, learn how to sew, figure out your
Hmm.
brand, and it's out there. So to
Mm.
just hear
Right.
like these are all the layers that
Mm.
All the
come with it,
layers.
because once you get into it, you have
Mm.
to now maneuver your way through that. Is
Mm.
really
Exactly.
interesting.
Mm.
So you have that background of being a curator, a creative director, a professor. At what moment did you realize that you loved fashion, not just for fashion, but you also wanted to help intellectually shape it?
Yeah, I would say it's so funny because I think I realized that in high school, my senior year in high school, but I didn't really know what to do with it until I got to college. But my senior year in high school, I played Frenchie in Greece. We did like a school production of Greece, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I was highly involved. I was the extra person who was student body president. I was prom queen. I did all of these things. And I was highly involved. I did sports. I was a cheerleader. I did all of these millions of things. But I was like, oh, but I want to be on the stage. Like, and I always loved Greece. And so when I got casted as Frenchie, I took it seriously. I was like, I'm going to thrift every look from the movie to its accuracy. And so I was just
Love this.
hunting in the Goodwills, like just
Oh
high
my
and
God.
low. And I made sure that my looks, I got like a wedding dress that I like dyed yellow to make sure it looked like Frenchie's dress in the movie. And I was like, oh, like this is costume design. Like this is, diving into character building, like which is, the sister of styling. And I didn't realize it then. But, even, as student body president, I made my classmates dress up for football and basketball games depending on different themes. So whether it was, toga night or Western night or whatever it was, I implemented these themes. So it's funny that now I create style guides, as like a side hustle for events. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I kind of started doing this in high school. And when I got to college, when I was studying journalism, I always just had fashion in the forefront. It was something that there are no majors that fused it at UNC Chapel Hill. That's where I got my bachelor's. And so I was just highly committed to just integrating it everywhere. So I started a student television show called Carolina Style, where I grabbed all of my fashion friends and we talked about different trends. We talked about thrifting and affordable shopping. And in 2006, 2007, 2008, that was not cool. And so I'm so happy like my students love it
Wow.
now, but
Yeah,
that
that's
was
so
really, I
awesome.
think, my shift, doing that, getting to college, and wanting to do the storytelling aspect of fashion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
With your background as a first generation Liberian American, what part of your culture shows up in your work, or does it show up in your work, or not?
Oh, 1000%. I always introduce myself as the child of two stylish Liberians. Okay. So first of
Say it.
all, like
You better
McKinley
say
and
it.
Africans are couturiers. So the gag is we have had seamstresses, okay? The
Mhm.
couture starts early, right? The
Hmm.
Mhm.
couture starts early in a West African home.
Yep.
And that
Oh.
honestly was something that I always, gravitated towards. And something that, back to high school, I was a part of this summer leadership diversity camp where we talked about every ism. We talked about racism and all of these things. And we actually had a culture night. And I remember being a rising junior in high school And, like they're like, bring something from your culture. And I like brought, an African, like, dress that my mom had made for me. And I just remember wearing it. And for the first time, my peers were like, oh, like that's cool. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so it was like realizing just the power, of my culture and the artistry that comes from the artisans, within our culture and how, fashion and creativity has always been the forefront. So I've integrated, that into my life, my just way that I connect with others. I had a podcast in 2016 that my cousin and I started called First Gens. And we did 3 seasons and we talked about being the hyphen in between two cultures. So being Liberian American, et cetera. And so we talked to different first generation Americans from other cultures in all of our episodes and highlighted them. And even just at our last Superfine Black Dandyism event that, I did last year, my dandy look was from a fabric, a wax West African fabric that my auntie got me 10 years ago that I literally had sitting for like over 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, it's everywhere. It's who I am.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's the thing. It's when you were talking about wearing your clothes for the first time. I remember my brother Ali, the middle boy, during Halloween, he decided to dress. We're Nigerian, so and we're Igbos, we're from the eastern part of Nigeria, and I remember from where we're from, the men would put chalk, like rub chalk on their bodies and wear like a little wrap around them, and then he carried a machete and put it around, and he's walking around, and of course everyone's like, hey, oh my god, this is so, but it's our culture.
Yeah,
he hadn't done, so for people to see it in the neighborhood, and he was walking around, and we were like, this is so cool, and mom was like, it's our culture, and it actually got a lot of attention. So when you say that, they Africans really, once they dress up, you will notice them. Once
for sure.
Yeah, you would definitely
1000%.
Whether you want to notice them or don't want to notice them, you will notice them.
Yes, it's coming. Yeah. But I love that because I feel like that also was probably like a cultural awakening within your brother's identity, like whether that was intentional for him or not, So that's really awesome.
That's true. So when you look at the global fashion now that you're speaking of the African, culture and in fashion, what do you think? And I checked out, of course, we checked out your page, and you're like all over the place. And so now that you travel and you meet a lot of people, what would you say the misconception that people have about African fashion, African culture that you are trying to dispel or you're working on dispelling?
I would maybe say one myth or misconception about African fashion that, I continuously try to dispel is just that, again, there's just so much artistry and creativity coming out of West Africa right now. And something that I even just teach my students in class is that, we go beyond a Eurocentric lens and we go beyond just where historically we've been told, that, fashion solely comes out of whoever said this, right? New York, London, and Paris, right? So I have a whole class where we talk about Paris and trends and evolution and all of these things from a fashion lens, but I make it very adamant to remind my students of the amazing designers, coming out of Nigeria, coming out of, Accra, coming out of so many amazing African countries. And so in addition to that, because like I mentioned, the aspect or just the concept of what couture fashion is, that is like one of a kind, made for you, which is then, the pinnacle of what luxury fashion is as well, is literally what the industry kind of holds by standard. And so that is also just the standard for so many African countries, So just reminding them of that, reminding them to continuously look at the amazing fashion shows and designers that are emerging out of those countries. I feel very passionate about that. I'm very adamant to ensure, from day one, my students understand the impact that Black people have had on the fashion industry, and that's throughout the entire diaspora.
Okay.
What do you think, just to pop back, because
Yeah.
you were talking about how you also help people figure out, I guess, what's trending, or, how to market towards that. So what do you think is running the global trends right now in fashion, or what do you see as right around the corner as being the hottest new thing?
Oof, that's a big one. So what's the I think right? I mean, okay, so the wild thing is that it's constantly changing, and the rate at which we as consumers receive trends is so distinctively faster than it
Faster.
used to
Yeah.
be 10 years ago. And a
Yeah.
lot of that is literally because of social media, primarily because of TikTok. So, because of how we're able to just go on a live stream and see what people are wearing on the streets of Tokyo right now in real time,
That's so
we're
true.
then able to connect and have access, so much more access than we ever have had before. And so, because of that, we just see trends just constantly, constantly. So, right now, maximalism, has definitely been more in the forefront. And I would say, like, of course, like the word of the year is whimsy. It's like everyone's just like, be whimsy, be whimsical, which I think is really beautiful because I think that it kind of like allows us to lean into something a little weird. I think
Mhm.
whimsy like has traditionally kind of been like that kind of weird person, but like there's appreciation for it now. Like there's
Yeah.
appreciation because the trend cycle has been so fast and people have now like adapted these different aesthetics and cores and niches. They've then kind of lost that individuality and that personal style. But I think with this reintroduction of maximalism and this reintroduction of whimsy, and it's literally like, hey, girl, the world's on fire. Hey, like,
That
you
is
need to
so
wear
true. I can
something
see
silly.
that. Yeah, because it's
Stop.
almost like there's a huge pendulum. Like you go from this extremely like sad
Always.
neutral place
Yeah.
to like let's get weird place. I love
Yes.
that.
Well,
Yes. That's
Aspen,
it.
when you say that, would you consider fashion to be more performative than expressive, or is it a combination of both?
I mean, I think it depends on who you're speaking to, right?
Okay.
I would
Mm.
think that it's both. I would say it's both. I do think that fashion is a reflection of what's happening in the world. So the same way that we're taking on different trends, everything that the fashion industry sets and pushes is honestly a result from all of the other industries and what's happening in the world. So the wars happening right now, the tariffs, the just, recession indicators, right? It's the state of the world has always impacted what then fashion dictates or whatever is in fashion or in trend. So we've been seeing a lot more conservatism, right? Within styles, hemlines like are very reflective of the time. We see a lot of midi dresses, things below the knee right now, a lot of higher collars, and whatnot. When you think about the workforce and people going back to work, back into the office.
Yeah.
And so all of those things are hyper connected. And I think that there does come an aspect of performatism within fashion and trends, just like any other industry. But I think that consumers are a little bit smarter now and can tell like when something doesn't feel authentic or genuine. And I
Mm.
think more consumers are really yearning for that realness and that authenticity.
Mm.
Well, one thing I actually was thinking about as you were talking about trends,
Hmm.
in my opinion, I could be wrong. You're the more of the expert here. For some reason, I feel like, yeah, we have trends now, but I don't
Hmm.
see them all over the place, despite the fact that we do have, social media, taking over the world.
Hmm.
Compared to, like, say, the late 90s to the early mid 2000s, that I
Hmm.
remember when polka dot was all over the place. Like, oh my God, everything was polka dot. I'm like, everything was
Yes,
polka dot. Now I remember polka
we're
dot
back.
came back a little bit, but you didn't really see it, a splash like you did back in the day.
Mm.
So would you
Uh-huh.
say that trends, when it comes to trends, there is still more of a minimal push for trends than we used to have back in the day? Because that's how I see it, but I could be wrong.
A minimal push. So like thinking that trends are not like widely then accepted or
Yeah,
perceived.
they're not as widely pursued as they were back then.
Oh.
That's
I don't, I think that I think trends are still like very much so like widely like perceived. I think that just dependent on like just you as an individual, right? I think that dependent on our algorithms, dependent on our generations, I think that dependent on our own personal style, I think that that then dictates like the level of adaptation for different trends, and so I would say that, for younger people, I think that the trend cycle is rapid, and constant. And I think that that's always been pretty consistent for young people, just generation from generation. Because when you think about it, you're really experimenting and just trying to figure out who you are. And so within the space of trying to figure out yourself, you're also trying to figure out your personal style. So you're literally trying any and everything, and you're just grasping at things that you can relate to as a human, so I think that they feel faster to me now because of access and social
okay.
media, but I would say that adaption is very much so dependent, I think, more so like on generation and exposure.
That's true. Well, because that's so funny. You just threw me back to like my adolescent years where I tried so much weird stuff, like weird stuff. But when you're younger and you're following a trend, you're
Hmm.
following who you're seeing on Instagram or seeing on your favorite TV show. But when you're
Exactly.
older, you're reacting to the state of the world, like
Yep.
which is just so much more gravity.
Yeah.
Like in the
Yep.
beginning, you're like kind of a parrot, and then later on, you're actually like responding to the wars, responding to
Isn't that
the
or we're getting
Victorianism of the or the the restriction of the earth.
isn't that or we're getting old, man? Because I'm just like
Like, hello, hello.
just like I was like, oh look, I was the same thing. I was like the new trend, the polka dots. I had polka dots. I was just like, but now I'm like, oh my God,
Have you
I'm more of a t-shirt jeans kind of girl.
have you ever felt yourself in like a style desert where you just like don't know what to wear? You're like, I just feel uninspired. You're just like, I don't know how to put together these things that I have. Like nothing
Yeah.
is really exciting me. It's just like sometimes I
Mhm.
feel like there's style numbness and we need people like you.
Style numbness.
Like
It's real.
into like the fashion world.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, we're going to talk about your meant to be, but also I know it was inspired by the Met Gala, and
Yes.
I'm just wondering for the Met Gala, I love the the ideas, the themes, and everything, but I kind of
Hmm.
sometimes think that some kind of go all the way off the theme, and then
Oh, yes.
just for shock value. Do you
Hmm.
think that the Met Gala achieves what the goal is each year,
Hmm.
or if not, how do you balance achieving whatever the fashion goal is, or whatever you see the goal is, with
Hmm.
while meeting the standard of Met Gala? Because I see there's some I've seen that are so underwhelming, but the last one that we just had was amazing. But
Hmm.
then I'm just like, okay, I hope we get something spot on next time. So how do you balance it to meet the visual aesthetic while also meeting what the expression and the
The goal.
are?
Yeah, so I agree with you as far as like it maybe like from a consumer standpoint feels inconsistent from
Yeah.
year in, year out. And I think that that's just dependent on whatever the theme is. I think sometimes when the theme is very like a little bit more specific, and a little bit more like narrow and not so vast, I think that that then is easily or easier to interpret. And so because of that, that then I think creates like as onlookers and consumers, we're kind of like just like waiting, right? We're all Joan Rivers and we're like, okay, so what are they wearing? What is it giving, right?
Yeah.
And so I will say though, is that the actual goal of the Met Gala is to raise money for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Okay. And so Eleanor Lambert, is the founder, creator of the Met Gala. She did this in like the 70s. Eleanor Lambert is also the creator of the Battle of Versailles. And that happened in 1973. It's a huge monumental fashion moment where, American fashion designers like battled against like French designers and kind of changed how we as consumers receive trends in fashion anywhere. Eleanor Lambert was a publicist and a journalist who really saw a huge just opportunity to promote and uplift American fashion and American fashion designers. And she did that. Stephen Burrows, was the only Black designer in the Battle of Versailles and the youngest who is still alive and amazing. Oscar de la Renta was also a part of that American group. Anyways, I say of all of that to say that I do feel like the Met Gala achieves its overall goal because they raised, I think, the most money that they've ever raised in Met
Last
Gala
year.
history
Last
during
year.
Superfine defining Superfine Black dandyism.
Okay.
So last year was like the most profitable year. Now I think again from a consumer like conceptual standpoint of the Met and the Met Gala, I think that art is subjective, and I think that this year's theme is literally costume art, and it's like the dress code is fashion is art. And so it's very vast because I think that we can all then interpret that in our own different ways, similar to camp, like similar to these other themes that felt very like broad. So I think that they're able to meet their goals, but I do see a difference in between like consumer reaction and interpretation dependent on the theme.
Can you help me understand, both of you? What is Black dandyism? Because I feel like I feel like I know what it is. I actually have no idea. Like what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, to me, like a Black dandy or just Black dandyism is symbolic to rebellion. It's basically kind of challenging status quo of fashion, and it's basically pulling, Black experience and Black style and fashion and everything that we have then kind of interpreted from, African heritage, etc., but then also taking Eurocentric and European, just like high fashion or luxury fashion and then interpreting it in our own way. It actually stems from slavery. It stems from, actual like slave owners dressing their Black slaves in their highest level fashion that they had access to, and kind of adorning them in different ways. And then that being again a Eurocentric, fashion sense or fashion inspiration that we then took back and kind of took control over and then interpreted in our own way within Black American fashion and beyond. But we also see it in the Congo with the sapeurs. We see it, in all of these other cultures and subcultures in a sense, right? And it's kind of like become like just how you then elevate your fashion sense and your style to like the highest degree to like kind of go against the status quo and challenge a stereotype.
So pretty much is like
such a professor, by the way. Thank you for that was a wonderful like I give that A+.
Yeah. It's the supporters of the Congo. So that's exactly where my mind went because the supporters of the Congo, a lot of them went to Europe and saw how they were dressed and brought that, but then made it more elaborate because you'd be seeing guys. I'm sure you've seen pictures of this men in like this bright
beautiful
orange
suit
or bright yellow suit.
I love it
with a cigar or a pipe with a cane, and he's walking and everything is pretty much showing we have pride in what we take it
what we wear.
A level higher, and we have pride showing.
Love that.
So that's pretty much. So good thing that you brought that up because the next question I was going to ask is how do you interpret that? Because Black dandyism was all about resistance, taking back. How would you interpret it now in the current landscape that we're in?
I feel like again, it's definitely an aspect of rebellion, when you think of just like Black dandyism. I think that a lot of dandies today are the ones that, again, challenge, those status quo and those stereotypes of like what, a person should look like or how they should dress. And I think that, it's really beautiful because I think that it really shines and showcases individuality. In like you were mentioning, Amaka, like to take your own personal style and say like it's almost like taking like your Sunday's best, right? Like just whatever that means to you and then elevating it to the max, right? And I think now with Black dandyism, what's been really beautiful to see is, even how it merges and there's an intersection between like queer culture and, the queer community. How there's an intersection between just like gender and beyond, like women are dandies, as well. And how that's able to, again, be a really beautiful, like self-expression, And so there's so many amazing Black dandies, from your Pharrells of the world to the Tyler, the Creators to your Janelle Monáe. Like those are, I think, some huge dandies. Erykah Badu, like Prince was a dandy. Like, hello. Like Prince was like a dandy of all dandies.
Yeah.
Okay. I think like he's like honestly like the biggest on my mood board as far as just like a mainstream dandy. But it's just like having fun and being unapologetic about who you are.
Fantastic. So meant to be.
Yeah.
You're a baby. So kind of tell us more about, you say that the body should be a canvas to, rather than styling the person, it's more like a canvas. Can you explain that I don't want to use the word theory, but your intellectual,
philosophy.
Thank you for the right word.
Yeah, philosophy. All right, so with meant to be, yes, like this is definitely my baby. It definitely feels like a child that I'm taking care of daily. And so what I'm really excited about is that, of course, we're taking the Met Gala theme and kind of, marginalize it. Well, not marginalizing it. We're taking the Met Gala theme every year and we're localizing it, for the South in a sense. And we're uplifting marginalized artists and creatives within our community in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's been really beautiful because, again, it's like a challenge because you don't know what the Met Gala theme is going to be until like November, like the end of November, maybe like early December. And it's like from an event planner standpoint and someone who's very type A, I'm just like, when is it going to drop? When is it going to drop?
Yeah.
And so, like, when they dropped it, it was like costume art. And I was like, okay, costume art, that's very broad. And so after just like doing like more research and just like talking to my exhibit team that I've been building out, I really like wanted to lean more specifically into the feminine body and the feminine body as costume art. Shout out to my two best friends who finally helped me like hone in on that specific phrasing. But the feminine body as costume art is, how we're interpreting it from a runway competition standpoint, with 19 designers that we have, challenging one another and challenging their own creativity to create one avant-garde look. And also within our exhibit that we have that will be up for a month at the Met Museum. And so I'm really excited about it because, within the exhibit, even I challenge local artists to create a piece based on the feminine body as costume art. It's kind of then pulling from like the divine feminine. It's kind of showing power in softness, and vulnerability. I think when we think about what does femininity mean to us and how does that then shape us, or like what messages does that then send to the outward world? It means so many different things to us personally. And what we really wanted to just try to hone in on is that it also means power and strength while also meaning like softness, right? It's the duality. It's kind of that beauty. So very excited to be able to, take that theme, localize it, but then also make it feel even more special.
Are you going to like make it more national? Like, because I know you're focused on a specific area, but are you looking to expand it? Maybe take it all the way to Africa? Is that something you're looking at?
I mean, never say never. Like I receive, any like spoken manifestations. Okay. I'm receiving every
See,
hello, like
I told her about manifestation. She doesn't believe in it. Go ahead, girl.
no, I all day as a believer, like that's everything to me because I think that we get these messages and seeds, like from God and like I was just listening to like a sermon this morning and it was kind of like do it in doubt, like do it when you're scared, like do it, just do it, like and I think that, oftentimes we can be our biggest, critic.
Yeah.
But I have, so much just faith in allowing for God to use me in this space and to allow me to, uplift and shine on a multitude of different communities. And again, to remind people that fashion is not just segmented in these just specific places, it lives all around us. So I would love to expand it. Come on, sponsors,
I know.
sponsors,
It would
come
be
on, let's.
awesome. It might as well could be meant to be can end up being like the Met Gala of in another space that we don't have. We have the Met Gala that we know of, but there
Right.
could be opportunities where meant to
Mm.
be would be that option, that space as well.
Mm.
Which
Yeah.
reminds me, why meant to be? How did you come up with that name?
It's very like literal. So the Mint Museum in Charlotte, I literally just called it Mint to Be, and I wanted it to at least, give like homage to them and our partnership, but then also I wanted it to be like a colon where it's like meant to be the feminine body is costume art, meant to be,
Oh,
camp, meant to be whatever the theme is yearly. But yeah, but I'm always workshopping and expanding, wanting to expand and do the things. So, who knows? Like I always want to give love and credit to Charlotte and give credit to North Carolina. I though am a first generation American, like I'm the youngest of six. My three older siblings were all born in Liberia. The three youngest were born in North Carolina. And I think that there's something really powerful about giving back to your community. My father was a dean of agriculture and agronomy in Liberia and then taught at North Carolina A&T State University until he passed in 97. And so my father really set this really beautiful blueprint of just honoring your community and your people and ensuring that, you can pour into them just as much. And so my sister who's a dentist, like we have plans of doing things back home,
oh
like
my
we're
God.
trying to keep things here, like this home, but like we definitely, have some hope and plan and love to want to, take that to Liberia and beyond.
Oh my God, that would
That's
be
so fun.
awesome. I could see that. So, as we
Yeah.
wrap up, anything that you need people to know about what to look out for, expect from you for the next couple of months down the line?
Yeah, so we're just very excited for Mint to be on May 1st
Mhm.
in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Mint Museum from 6 to
Yeah.
10 p.m. And so very, very excited for this event. And I'm always doing different events and collaborating within the community, and beyond. And when I say the community, that is not, limited to Charlotte. But I create style guides. I collaborate with different event planners and people looking to want to create some kind of additional layer in fashion and theme to their event. So I help them ideate and creative direct those concepts. And so I'm always like looking and wanting to collaborate with other creatives and other people within the eventing space. I also have, like another event in the fall called the Trend Set that really allows for people to learn more about trend forecasting, but like in a bar. So it's like I take my classroom, but I put it in a bar. No students allowed, just community. And so kind of, really excited about that in the fall, and kind of ushering in like fall, winter fashion and just predictions for other industries. But yeah, I'm always doing something on social media. So I'm always, keeping my boots on the ground, as they say.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
fun.
That is so
How
fun.
fun.
So fun. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. So
Oh, thank
and
you.
definitely would love to have you back because maybe there's some trends or some
Please.
that
Yeah,
would
keep
want
us
to
I
talk
all
would
up
about.
to date,
love.
right? Don't
Yes,
let us fall behind.
I know, because trust me, I'm
Please.
just like, yeah, there's the magazine and all, but I'm the Yeah, I'm a t-shirt girl. I'm just like whatever I just close my eyes, whichever one I pick, that's what I'm wearing. So to have you come on board and say, girl, this is a trend, you need to get with the times, I'm ready. So
Okay.
definitely keep us posted on a Mint to Be. We'll definitely check that out and put that out there. But again, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure.
Of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you for your time, your amazing questions. Really great conversation. It really flowed. So I'm extremely grateful. Would love to just keep in touch. However, I can support you all further. I am such a fan of the publication, everything you all are doing to really shine light on the diaspora and beyond. Beautiful, beautiful work, like stunning, just everything. It's really amazing what y'all are doing. So keep on doing it and let's keep in touch, please.
Love it.
Thank you, Mama. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Final thoughts.
I had so much fun. This was like a class that I would want to be a part of.
Well,
for sure.
I was like, what classes was I taking in college? Because this sounds way better.
I'm telling you, it was just so much fun. I was like, keep talking. I definitely want to talk to her again because I know that she would definitely have topics that she would want to cover. We're definitely open to that. But just things that are like bothering us about, or something that we're very fascinated about in terms of the fashion industry, someone would definitely want to talk about. And I'm sure you guys took some, because I took some notes.
Well, because like the thing is, there's trends, and then there's like the Met Gala, and you got this like high art of fashion, which is like, what is? And I feel like she has found a way to get the two ends to communicate for the normal person like me, you know.
And you know what I was just about to say? She just made it easy. Just like speak to me like you're speaking to a 5-year-old. And she does it so well. And you're just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. When you asked her about Black dandism and she literally went into detail.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
I was like, oh no, I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. And
but it's so awesome when she put it in the context, the good, the bad, the ugly, like all of it. And it was like, okay, cool. Like, what an exciting theme, you know?
Yeah, and it did so well. And the moment it came out last year from Met Gala, I was like, yeah, people are gonna knock it out of the ballpark. And like she said, it raised the most it has ever had. So not surprising, you know. So it was really good learning, you know, her being an actual professor, and she's given the layers of fashion, things that a lot of people really do not think about. You know, they don't think about pretty much what it really entails until they maybe get into it, and then they start to focus on it. A lot of people, I think, like I said, they tend to think, I want to be a fashion designer, I want to, you know, do this, and then people will buy it as long as it looks cute. And it's like, okay, that's well and good, but there's different layers to it.
For sure.
And it's eye-opening.
Okay, so I always say this thing. When people are very intelligent, they make you feel even more intelligent just by talking to them, because like you don't feel uncomfortable saying, I have no idea what the hell this is. Yeah. And she really, from the get-go, was just very, very easy.
Just and you could just tell from her energy, even when you check out her page and everything, that energy emanates when you're, you know, looking at her videos or her photos, and she's always doing this, which is so cute. So and she has that personality for sure.
And an amazing style. We didn't even touch on her personal style. Can't even.
But you know, you know, check out her page.
Yeah.
You know, you will definitely see Mint to Be May 1st coming up, an exhibition, and that is inspired by the Met Gala. So that is something like that. And I was like, why don't you have their own gala? You know, that's part. If you guys have not checked her out, please do. Professor P on Instagram, and also Mint to Be coming up May 1st, MINT to Be. That will be, you know, I'm sure it's going to be an awesome event inspired by this year's Met Gala theme. So be sure to check her out. Thank you guys for joining us. We do hope you enjoyed the presentation. Oh, well, not the presentation, the conversation that we had with her. And be sure to leave your thoughts. You know, tell us who you'd like us to connect with. We'll do our best to do so. Until then, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Catch more on our platforms, and be sure to subscribe and email us. We'd love to hear from you.